That's why we talk for so long at the beginning of each of these, is because we have to like ramp up into then like doing a structured conversation about something.
Yeah.
I run a virtual playwriting group, and so often all the writers just sort of like stare at each other, especially in like the early meetings where they don't know each other that well. And so then I'm like, okay, time for me to info dump about me, what's going on with me. So I get to like work out some I don't do stand-up, but it feels like I'm like working out some stand-up jokes on this like captive audience because no one else is fucking talking. The past 2 years especially though, like a few meetings in, people have been talking. We had like some good jokes going in my playwriting group on Wednesday, and that felt really good, where I was like, okay, we got bits. We renamed our group chat, like, so it's not just like UC whatever anymore. It like it's called Vavid, which is an inside joke. And I was like, okay, we have inside jokes now. I'm cultivating community.
You are a community builder. I've told you this before. My dissertation was a form of statistical analysis called social network analysis, where you conceptualize individuals as nodes in the network, and you can build out the way you collect the data in many ways. The easiest way is to do it within, places where people have to be connected to each other, like students in a classroom. But you can also build a network, and people rarely do this because it's very hard, by identifying someone who is a central node, and then identifying all the people who they're friends with, and then identifying all the people who those people are friends with. And if I was ever going to do something like that, I would start with you, and I would ask you, tell me your 10 best friends in New York City, and then I would ask all of those people, tell me your 10 best friends in New York City, and then I would just have a whole collection of, I don't know, 20-somethings in New York to do whatever I want with.
Whatever you want with. Speaking of doing whatever you want with a bunch of 20-somethings in New York, welcome to Informed Attraction, a podcast about how finance bros are very, very scary to me. Hosted by 2 videotapes that desperately need to be returned to the store. I'm Mackenna Goodrich.
I'm Dr. Aubrey Hoffer.
And today we are going to be talking about American Psycho, the book, the movie, and briefly the musical, and how it relates to the modern grind set influencer man villain people I'm afraid of.
Are you going to talk about that guy who went viral recently? He's like the super buff black guy. And
yeah, we're going to talk about Ashton Hall.
Okay, great.
We're absolutely we're gonna watch the video. We're gonna watch the Ashton Hall video later. Don't you worry about that.
Great, I'm locked in.
Have you seen it? Have you seen the Ashton Hall video?
I've seen several.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that is specifically that genre of male influencer is who we're gonna specifically talk about today. We're gonna less talk about like the Andrew Tates of the world and more talk about the Ashton Halls of the world, and sort of like what the distinction in the manosphere is between those 2 types of like grifty online man.
I will say, like, day in the life content is my guilty pleasure. Like,
Really?
Oh, yeah, my TikTok is just all, like, not all, like, the Ashton Hall, like, grind set. It's a lot of, like, I'm a 19-year-old student at Auburn University. Follow me along for my day in the life. And I'm just locked the fuck in. And it's just, I woke up and I had my coffee, and then I journaled, and then I went to class, and then I did Pilates, and then I went home and I watched fucking Gilmore Girls, and I'm like, holy fuck, I love this shit!
Well, we're going to talk extensively about morning routines today. I was going to ask this later, but Aubrey, what is your morning routine?
So, in preparation for today's episode, I did my full routine that I rarely get to do because it is so extensive. So I did my full, like, everything shower, did all of my hair stuff, I put on my lotions and creams, I did my full skincare. I am smooth right now.
Great.
In a typical day-to-day, it is not that way. Like, that's a perfect world is where I do that routine, which is probably an hour and a half to 2 hours, genuinely, because I just find it so relaxing and fun. Typical morning routine for me, genuinely, is like, wake up, maybe do a body shower, maybe not, being fucking for real, put on my makeup, get dressed. My husband makes me breakfast. So I eat a little bit of breakfast and then go to work.
Hell yeah.
What is your morning routine?
What happens from the moment I get out of bed to 11 a.m.? Full mystery, full crapshoot. Normally, I'm pretty much waking up immediately getting on my computer because I like to wake up right before work starts.
Love that.
Somewhere in there, I'll brush my teeth and wash my face. At 11 a.m., I have to have a cup of coffee because I've talked about being neurodivergent on the podcast before. Food timing is the thing I get the most like stress over. So I have to have a cup of coffee around 11 a.m. every day, and then I have to have lunch around noon every day. I will be panicking in the next 15 minutes when it comes to noon, and I can't immediately eat lunch. I did have a granola bar before this, so I don't panic about not having lunch at noon. And then I have to have dinner around 7 p.m.
So I'm not a daily coffee drinker, but my husband is, and it's gotten to the point where our apartment is really nice and it has a coffee bar, and so my husband will go to the coffee bar every morning, but he hates to go without me. So then he's like,
So you just go with him?
So I go with him, but then I don't really like drinking coffee every day, so I've had to either try to abstain, or they have teas and stuff, so I've been trying to do like a tea or something, because I physically like can't handle being caffeinated every day.
Do you like matcha?
I do like matcha. They don't have matcha at our coffee bar.
You should tell them that they have to, or you'll kill them. You'll go full Patrick Bateman and kill them.
I just told them that we wanted to renew our lease, so I will say, and I will renew my lease as long as you meet my terms.
My terms, which is matcha lemonade. I have a matcha lemonade too.
The problem with my apartment complex is that I live in a really nice apartment complex that's in Kentucky. So there's just there's just not a demand. Like my neighbors, like the units next to me are just empty perpetually. It's a little bit of a ghost town, so I think they're really trying to,
which is crazy because you live in Louisville.
Yeah, I mean, I live in like probably one of the more like suburban areas of Louisville, so it's kind of like, I mean, I get it. I think it's an awkward placement because I think if somebody wants to live in a nice apartment, you probably want to live closer to like downtown or the Highlands
and not
area.
In the Walmart parking lot.
I fucking love living in a Walmart parking lot. I walk to Walmart every goddamn day, and you know what? Walmart is feeding America, so I'm not going to be a hater on it. Yeah, I don't know. So I will tell them that give me matcha or I will kill.
Well, I was going to just a little bit later. I will introduce what the hell American Psycho is after. But since we're talking about morning routines and also where we live, Aubrey, I would love to start today's episode by you reading Patrick Bateman's opening monologue from the American Psycho movie. I'm going to send you a link to it right now.
All right, I'm going to lock the fuck in.
Yeah, I need you to do your best Christian Bale impression.
I am not going to do a Christian Bale
This is your audition
impression.
This is your audition for the Luca Guadagnino remake to replace Austin Butler.
I'm not going to do my Patrick Bateman. I'm going to do the Aubrey Hoffer version of Patrick Bateman. All right? Okay. I live in the American Gardens building on West 81st Street. My name is Patrick Bateman. I'm 27 years old. I believe in taking care of myself and a balanced diet and a rigorous exercise routine. In the morning, if my face is a little puffy, I'll put on an ice pack while doing my stomach crunches. I can do 1,000 now. After I remove the ice pack, I use a deep pore cleanser lotion. In the shower, I use a water-activated gel cleanser, then a honey almond body scrub, and on my face, an exfoliating gel scrub. Then apply an herb mint facial mask, which I leave on for 10 minutes while I prepare the rest of my routine. I always use an aftershave lotion with little or no alcohol because alcohol dries your face out and makes you look older. Then moisturizer, then an anti-aging eye balm, followed by a final moisturizing protective lotion. There is an idea of Patrick Bateman, some kind of abstraction, but there is no real me. Only an entity. Something illusory. And though I can hide my cold gaze, you can shake my hand and feel flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can even sense our lifestyles are probably comparable. I simply am not there.
You booked it.
I fucking killed it. I am the greatest goddamn actor of all time.
So that's the opening monologue from the movie American Psycho, which came out in 2001. Aubrey, have you read the book?
I have read the book. Is this opening monologue not part of the book? It's been a few years since I've read it.
It's sort of a part of the book. Let me go grab my copy of American Psycho, which I meant to do earlier, because let me show you how long the opening monologue is in the book.
Oh yeah, it's like a chapter.
So in the book, the first scene is actually him and Tim Price, another character, in the car together, going to a party at, I believe, at Evelyn's, Patrick Bateman's fiance's house. But then the second section of the book is called Morning, and it is his morning routine. It starts on page 24 of the book. So it starts here. I'm showing Aubrey on a camera now. So this is where this starts.
Yeah.
Him describing his morning routine goes on for about 6 full pages.
Yeah.
It is like he goes through painstaking detail about what his apartment looks like, what he does in the morning, what he eats, what he wears, and it is just from the moment he wakes up to when he walks out of the apartment to go to his job.
I much prefer the movie to the book. I will say, I think a lot of people have very strong feelings about the book. I maybe am divergent because I was just somewhere in the middle. I thought it was okay. Yeah. There were parts of the book that I thought were really interesting and cool, but I genuinely think that the movie was, let's take the parts of the book that are interesting and cool and adapt it and just leave out everything else.
Yeah, the book has a lot of these like big, long, descriptive paragraphs. It's very much formatted as like Patrick Bateman's stream of consciousness. Mm-hmm. And I think that the book does a great job of giving you a taste of that without it getting overwhelming.
Yeah.
For example, there's a part in the book that's literally a chapter called Whitney, where Patrick Bateman just spends several pages giving you his opinion on Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
And like something like that happens a little bit in the movie with like the Huey Lewis and the News stuff, but it's like there's a whole section where he talks about how he feels about Genesis. There's a whole section where where he talks about how he feels about U2, and then they go to a U2 concert. Yeah. And it's like, it's good that stuff is not in the movie.
Yeah, like if I can recall, I feel like there was nothing in the book where I was like, oh, I wish that this had been in the movie.
There's a couple little plot beats that I think would have been interesting in the movie, but it's not. They're very much like different entities based on the same character to me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I can see that. I think I view the movie as just refining and tightening the character in a way that, I don't know, like, it, like, collapses Patrick Bateman's character down to something that's really clear and concise, whereas the book, I feel like there is just these long monologues, these, like, it gets to the point where with the book, it took me a while to get through it because I was like, I get it. He's fucked up.
It's like the mode of the book and the mode of the movie are very different because like the book really isn't like narrative driven.
No.
There's not really like plot until he kills Paul Owen. Whereas, like, the movie, it's the whole thing is much more plot heavy. And that's why Bret Easton Ellis who's the author of the book, has issues with the movie, because he thinks that they're doing two completely different things. And I agree with him. They are kind of ultimately, they're doing the same critique, but their like mode of functioning is very different because you can't really do a stream of consciousness movie.
No. Should we go through like what the major, for the people who don't know anything about American Psycho? Should we go?
I'll go up back to my first page of the brief overview of American Psycho. So American Psycho is a book that was written by Bret Easton Ellis in 1991 and is also a film directed by Mary Harron that was written by Harron and Guinevere Turner that came out in 2000.
Women!
Both women. And then sort of the plot summary of both is that American Psycho follows Patrick Bateman, a wealthy young investment banker in 1980s Manhattan who also happens to be a murderous psychopath. Bateman narrates his life in obsessive detail, from designer clothes to trendy restaurants, offering a bleak satire of consumer culture and masculine vanity. As the story unfolds, his violent impulses emerge through increasingly graphic and disturbing acts of murder, torture, and sexual violence. The novel explores themes of identity, alienation, and moral decay in a hyper-consumerist and status-driven society. Despite his horrific actions, Bateman remains emotionally empty, and those around him remain oblivious or indifferent to his crimes and or fantasies. And I say and or fantasies because it is intentionally left ambiguous, especially in the book, but also in the movie, what his crimes actually are, how many of them actually happen, and which of them are just simply really fucked up daydreams. I mentioned the character Paul Owen earlier. Throughout the beginning of the book and the movie, Bateman is particularly envious of a man named Paul Owen. His name is changed to Paul Allen in the film, and I don't really know why.
Sounds better.
I guess. He has an account called the Fisher account that Bateman really wants. Bateman invites Paul to dinner, gets him drunk, and kills him with an axe in his apartment. He then stages it to look like Owen went to London by taking over his apartment and managing his affairs. Bateman uses Owen's apartment for further murders, killing and dismembering specifically prostitutes. The space becomes a personal slaughterhouse, but no one seems to notice or care. Eventually, Detective Donald Kimball interviews Bateman multiple times about Owen's disappearance. Bateman becomes paranoid, but Kimball never accuses him outright. In the book, Bateman's violence really accelerates into this like surreal territory. He tortures his victims in increasingly outlandish ways. This includes an ex-girlfriend of his. He murders a child at the zoo by just slicing a kid's neck and then in broad daylight. And he also kills a colleague with a nail gun. Out of panic after this violent spree of killings, Bateman calls his lawyer and confesses to dozens of murders in graphic detail, including the murder of Paul Owen, but nothing happens. When Bateman confronts the lawyer laughs off the confession and insists that he had dinner with Paul Owen in London recently, suggesting that Owen might still be alive. Bateman returns to Owen's apartment and finds it completely cleaned, repainted, and up for sale with no signs of the murders having had happened there. A woman, possibly a realtor, seems disturbed by his presence and urges him to leave. Bateman returns to his social circle, realizing nothing has changed. No one noticed his crimes or cares.
Yeah.
The book is way more violent and sexual and racist than the movie.
Yeah.
Reading the book after knowing and loving the movie for so many years was actually like a pretty jarring experience, is what I'll say. Because obviously the movie is violent. The book is maybe the most violent thing I've ever read.
Yeah, so this is where Mackenna and I are a little bit different, because I frequently say that in our group chat, I'm just going to drop ISIS beheading videos at random to try to desensitize everyone.
No.
I am somebody who actively has sought out violent content since I was like 9, so I am not as disturbed by violence. That being said, my threshold is incredibly high. I liked that the book was more violent. I thought that elements of that were part of the things that I liked about the book.
I want to say I don't dislike that. I actually don't dislike that about the book. It was just really jarring after the movie. Like, there is not as much of an emphasis on torture. And like, he kills people in the movie. He tortures people. He like shoves a rat up a woman's vagina in the book. Like, he tortures people in the book in a way that just simply is not present in the movie. And that I think was a really jarring experience for me, because I was just like, oh, his depravity in the movie is a very sanitized version of his depravity in the book.
Which I think makes sense, right? Because if you really wanted to showcase that depravity on screen, you get into a realm where you're going to have people who glorify it. Not that they don't already glorify American Psycho, but I do think you have to be careful about what you're visualizing. And I don't know, I think the novel is super interesting in that way, like just being able to like what I think is that the attempt was to get the reader to become desensitized to the violence by shoving it in your face so much.
Do you know about the play Cleansed by Sarah Kane?
Oh, is that the one with the eyeballs? And the baby and
the rats.
Yeah, the rats. Yeah, I read that when I was very young. That's actually one of the things that got me interested in like bleak, violent media, because I read that when I was probably 11.
I'm realizing we are in fact talking about two different plays here. You're talking about Blasted, I'm talking about Cleansed. And that just goes to show how many of Sarah Kane's plays had some real crazy stuff in them. Anyway, the point still stands. The point I'm going to make is true about both of these plays. It's interesting that I would have been like, it would be so hard to do this in a movie if I didn't know anything about Sarah Kane's work. And like, Sarah Kane was really disappointed that people wouldn't use live rats in productions of Cleanse, because she was like, no, like a rat should like run around on them, and directors were like, that's a fucked up thing to do to an actor. And she was like, okay. She was like, that's fine, I guess.
Well, that's why sometimes writers don't direct.
Yes. Obviously, there are also sex scenes in the movie. Famously, the threesome where Patrick is like extremely preoccupied with watching himself in the mirror, which is a thing that Christian Bale just did. That wasn't like a thing that he was directed to do. He just decided that would make sense for Patrick to do. And I think that's awesome.
When are we going to talk about the fact that Christian Bale has been one of your big loves since I've known you?
He is so sexy to me. Christian Bale is so sexy to me. I know he's not a nice man. He famously, I think, has anger issues. He is so sexy to me.
He, though, like, I understand he has had anger issues. Although, I'm going to be real. That time when he yelled at that person on the Terminator set, I get it. I get it. And honestly, I really don't think that he was as in the wrong as people paint him as.
I do tend to agree with you.
Because if when you are locked the fuck in and somebody is doing something that they shouldn't even be doing, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. Yes, I do. This is
also his like, what, isn't his stepmom or something Gloria Steinem?
Yes.
That's crazy.
I think it is his stepmom.
Yeah. King?
I do love him.
He's one of the ones where his American accent is so good that when I hear him speak with his natural accent, I am jarred and feel like he's playing a character.
Yeah, there's a few, I think especially because he's so known for playing Americans.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with like Will Poulter. I forget that Will Poulter is British all the time. I forget that Andrew Garfield is British all the time.
Will Poulter has English face to me. I can never forget.
He does have English face, but I can't even think. The only time I've heard him speak in a piece of media in his actual accent is The Bear.
Yeah.
They only let Will Poulter play Americans in movies.
But yeah, he's a real one for that. That was understanding the assignment when he just decided to look at himself during that.
When he just looked at himself in the fucking mirror while this threesome scene was happening.
Yeah.
What's interesting about the book is there's a lot more like explicit talk about sex in general, but also like sex scenes, like very like like the threesome doesn't just happen in the book. It's like described in painstaking detail the way that things are in all parts of the book. The way that he talks about Whitney Houston is, you know, spends the same amount of time talking about this threesome. What's interesting is the first time, there's two notable threesomes in the American Psycho book. The first time the threesome happens, it's just the sex that is described. And then you find out later that he did torture the two women at the end. He didn't kill them, but he just tortures them at the end of like the sex part. And then the next time a different one happens, he describes the sex into the eventual torture and murder. And I'll say that the first one not having murder at it allows a reader, not any specific reader, but allows a reader to be horny while reading that section and feel safe being horny. And then the second time when it happens again, and then it gets really gross and fucked up very quickly, then your body feels wrong.
Yeah.
That didn't happen to anyone who we know.
No.
But it could have happened to someone in the 30 years since the book was published.
I'm sure. And I'm sure that, you know, if that were to happen, I think there was probably some intention with that.
Yeah, it feels like maybe that's exactly what Bret Easton Ellis was doing.
Is he a villain? I actually don't know that much about him as a person.
He's like an odd guy. I wouldn't call him a villain. He's a bit of an odd guy. He got in trouble because he, like, when Catherine Bigelow won Best Director at the Oscars, he like made this tweet about how it was tokenism and people took it as him being misogynistic. And like, I think I get his rationale behind it of being like, this is just the Academy patting themselves on the back by like giving the award to a woman.
Yeah.
But it's like, it did also in him saying that sort of erase Catherine Bigelow's accomplishment. And it just probably wasn't, he just didn't take the right tone with it. But I think it was also wrapped up in like people already thinking he's a misogynist because of this book.
You know what, Bret Easton Ellis, I'm glimpsing at your Wikipedia right now, and honestly, there's not a lot of red flags for me here. I'm going to say that right now, you're going to be in the green zone for Aubrey Hoffer.
Okay, great.
I love you. Come on the podcast. That's what that means. I I remember I tried to read one of his other books. I think it was his debut, maybe. It was one about these university students, and like he does the thing that authors do where his characters will have connections to characters in his other books.
Yes.
And one of the characters in the one I tried to read is canonically like Patrick Bateman's little brother.
Correct.
I didn't finish it. It was not my cup of tea, but not to say I would never read another BEE book.
Patrick Bateman the first time he makes an appearance in any of Ellis's books is his novel, his debut novel, The Rules of Attraction, which his little brother Sean is the main character of. And then Sean actually has a cameo in American Psycho.
Yes.
When him and Patrick have dinner, and the whole book / also movie, Patrick is obsessed with getting into this restaurant Dorsia, and his brother gets in super easily, even though Patrick hasn't been able to get in throughout the entire book, and that's like a piece of contention.
One of my favorite memories I have of me and my husband is we went to LA one time, and there was this Japanese restaurant I wanted to try. And so, we knew we were going on this trip, and I knew I wanted to go to this restaurant, so I made the reservation about a month ahead. And we go there, and it's this wonderful small restaurant, and we're in this table near the front door, and Josh and I were just delighted because we would just watch all these little hipsters come in and get turned away at the door because they didn't make a reservation. And it happened, I'm not kidding, probably 5 or 6 times during the meal, and we were just delighted the entire time, and we just felt so exclusive because we got to be there and they didn't.
Was it Nobu?
It was not Nobu. It was...
Okay.
I don't remember the name of it. It was a wonderful restaurant. I had sake for the first time there. Cool. I'm not a sake person. I figured if I'm going to try sake, I'll try it at this place because this was like one of their big things was like, oh, we have so many sakes, like blah, blah, blah. And I was like, give me a sake where that will help me determine whether this is even a beverage for me. And they did, and it was okay. Not my drink of choice, but we had wonderful food there, and it was great. And I loved the entertainment of watching LA hipsters get turned away.
You'll be shocked to hear that I like sake.
I'm not. You.
No, I know you're not, because I famously like the taste of alcohol. I'm like an old-fashioned guy.
I living in Kentucky, I have started to grow fond of a bit of bourbon. I had a Kentucky Mule last night, and it was very good. I love anything muled.
Have you had a penicillin?
Oh, what is in that?
It's another whiskey-based beverage, but it has like honey in it.
I think I have. There was a restaurant we used to go to in Arizona called House of Tricks, and they had a great...
House of Tricks rules.
Yeah. Oh, no.
R.I.P., right? They're closed, right?
House of Tricks, yeah. House of Tricks got closed down because it got fucking replaced to be parking because Arizona State University is terrible. But I was actually thinking of a restaurant called Hidden House that's in downtown Chandler, and they have...
Which is also really good.
It is delicious, and they have this great cocktail menu, and they have pretty much any classic cocktail you can think of. And so I think I have had a penicillin, which I like. I've had a French 75, which I really liked. And there was another like famous cocktail. It's like something bee sting, bee something.
Bee's knees?
Bee's knees? It could be if that's like a famous classic cocktail. Yeah. And I really like that. So
great.
I tried to force myself to drink mint juleps for a while when I knew that I was moving to Kentucky. And then I got to Kentucky and I was like, where's all the mint juleps at? And everyone's like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's tourist food. I was like, oh.
That restaurant, when we went to Jacob's Pickles in New York when you were here, I got like what was basically a mint julep and it fucks. So like, sorry Louisville, but like the drink is good, man.
I think it's just hard to make, and so people don't usually make them unless it's derby time specifically. But I was like, oh, okay, fuck me, I guess.
I think that Patrick Bateman would hate the Kentucky Derby.
Oh, really? I feel like that.
Yeah.
I feel like he would be fully in performance mode at the Kentucky Derby.
He'd be annoyed the entire time.
I think he would internally be annoyed, but I think he'd be fronting like he liked it.
Totally, absolutely. Yeah. The book starts off like extremely tame, and as it goes on and as Patrick unravels, it gets more and more gruesome, more and more insecure, and more hateful. And I say that because Patrick Bateman is extremely racist in the book.
Yeah.
I feel like the homophobia is really clear in the movie, but the racism is not as clear as it is in the book. The N-word is used in the book so many times that does move Bret into the yellow zone for me, because I have a personal qualm about white authors using that word so freely. But I was shocked by just how explicitly racist Patrick Bateman is.
I mean, that's how all the fucking white finance bros are. That's where I'm like, I guess that's where I don't have as much of a qualm with it, because I think the intent of it is like, yeah, this is how people like this think, and dehumanize Black people.
Yes. Whether Patrick actually kills anyone or not is a question that's sort of up for debate. I ultimately land on the side that, like, he does kill some people in this book. I do not think he kills all of these people, especially not as gruesome as he does in the book. I think he kills the home, like, the unhoused person who he, like, gives $1 to and then kills. I think Bret Easton Ellis has stated that he, like, doesn't have, like, a firm opinion on this, and that, like, it is ambiguous even to him. My headcanon is I think the people who Bateman kills in this book are the lower class people. And then I think all the times he talks about killing rich people, he doesn't actually kill them.
Yeah, I think I land somewhere similar, where I think some of the deaths that are conceivably realistic, right? Like sex workers, unhoused people, like people who historically have been targeted as victims, more likely than like slashed random kid's throat at the zoo and walked away. I will say the most recent time I watched it, I went into it with, I'm gonna watch this with the headcanon that he doesn't actually kill anyone and that this is all just part of his fantasy. And that made it a really interesting watch. And I don't think I personally endorse that as like the read I have on it, but I do think that it is really fascinating to think about it as just this guy who, because it also makes sense, right? That it's like, he's this fucking Nepo baby who doesn't have a real job. He doesn't do fucking anything. And he just
does nothing at work.
Yeah. And he just indulges himself in these fucking fantasies. And they feel real to him because he doesn't even feel like a real person. And I do just kind of fuck with that interpretation, and it's one that I enjoy playing with, so.
There are ones that I absolutely don't think happen. For example, in the book, I don't think this happens in the movie. In the book, he kills, actually, I know this doesn't happen in the movie. He kills his ex-girlfriend. They go on a date, and it goes really poorly. He's, like, drunk and out of it the whole time. I think it's one of the instances where he couldn't get them into Dorsia. You know, and he's like drunk and out of it and like fumbling over his words, and she's very cool and calm and collected and is a lawyer and all this stuff. And then she goes back to his apartment with him, and then he tortures and kills her. I don't think he kills his ex-girlfriend, who's a high-powered lawyer. I think he goes on a date with his ex-girlfriend. It goes really poorly, and so then he fantasizes about what it would be to take his power back by killing her. So to me, that is one that I absolutely don't think happens, and that he's just and I kind of feel the same about the Paul Owen one, where it's like he's just fantasizing about like what it would be to kill these people who make him feel small.
Yeah. And honestly, I just find that really compelling too. Like this idea of like, I think that the story is as compelling if he's really killing people and just getting away with it because he is a drop in the ocean. And also all of these finance bros are all basically the same guy and they're all interchangeable. And maybe Paul Owen is alive in London. Also, maybe it's just another fucking guy who's in this finance bro group because they're all the fucking same. Like, I think that is very interesting to me. And I think too, isn't it maybe Justin Theroux's character in the movie who has an English accent randomly that he develops and then drops? Like I think stuff like that is really fascinating to play with. And I think it is also so fascinating to view it as a story about just a guy indulging in murderous fantasies that aren't even real, and also something in between. Like, that's why I think it is such a compelling narrative, both in the book and in the movie, because any interpretation of it, I think, has legs.
Yeah. So there's a Vulture interview where with Mary Herron, where there's a bunch of interviews about this around the time that it was like the 25th anniversary of the book. So Aubrey, I'm going to send you this. I'm going to read you the question. It's not really a question. And I'm going to have you read Mary Herron's response.
I'm going to be locked in.
So the question, the question, I say it's a question, it's a sentence. I find the film to be very funny at parts, but when I reread American Psycho last summer, I didn't find the book to be funny. I found it to be a lot harder.
It is extremely, extraordinarily violent. And when I first started reading it, I was like, da 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 da, for the first 30 pages. I hit this really horrible part when he kills Bethany, his ex-girlfriend, and I had to stop reading it for a month. I could not read it. And then I thought, I'm going to go back in.
That is the exact experience I had with this book, where I got to what happens to Bethany, and I was, what quote unquote happens to Bethany, and I was like, we're going to take a break from American Psycho, we're going to read a different book for a little bit, and then I read The Vanishing Half, which is a book about colorism, and I was like, it's really weird to be reading this like nuanced take on colorism and passing in the Black community, then go back to reading American Psycho, where he hates Black people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I ultimately really liked reading the book, and I appreciate it for what it is. I don't think I'll ever read it again. I think it's like a thing. I think I'll watch the movie again. I don't think I'll ever read the book again, because it was just like, it's dense because it is just the part where he's describing his morning, there's no paragraph breaks.
Yeah.
It's just going and going and going and going. And it's like, the parts of the book where like conversations are happening are also really hard to read, because they're like changing names and it's all this shit. And I really like reading the book. I really appreciate the book for what it is. I think Bret is a very smart, interesting author. I don't think I will be putting myself through reading it again in my life.
I'm exactly the same way. Like, I read the book, I was like, cool, this gives me, I think, more context to appreciate parts of the film, which I absolutely love. Genuinely, I probably watch American Psycho at least once a year. I love it.
It's in my Letterboxd top 4.
Ooh.
I'll also say this was an insane time in my life to read this book, because I am 27 years old, the age that Patrick Bateman is in the book and in the movie. And I spend a fair amount of time on the Upper West Side, specifically in the 80s. Like the 80s, the streets, not the time period. I don't time travel to the 1980s, where Bateman lives. And I did have a real out-of-body experience at times while reading this book, because I was just like, oh, this is like happening in the place that I live among like my age peer group.
Yeah.
Many people had tried to write an adaptation of American Psycho before Mary Herron came onto the project. This is what she had to say about Aubrey is playing the role of Mary Herron on this podcast, by the way.
I am.
So, Aubrey, would you read what Mary Herron had to say about other adaptations that came before hers?
I didn't think they were funny. What I loved when I read the book was, I thought, this is early Evelyn Waugh, like around vile bodies. It's so precise on these privileged people, getting the way they speak. I thought about those earlier scripts. They're missing this. I don't think you can go into American Psycho and be super moralistic about it.
And I think it's very specific that the adaptation is ultimately done by 2 women.
Yeah.
And that like a lot of the complaints you get about versions of the script that were written by men is either were like having too much fun with the violence, or they were being very like, oh my God, this is awful. And I think that these 2 women were able to strike a really good middle of the road tone and frame and container of the world in which to tell this story.
This is why the remake will be bad.
I know.
You heard it here first, folks. It will be bad.
And I like Luca too. It's so tough. I didn't really know where to fit this next little tidbit in, but Mary Herron loved Joker, the movie.
Oh.
And that's fascinating to me, because when I watched Joker, I was like, this is just American Psycho, but worse.
No, what Joker is fucking King of Comedy by Martin Scorsese, it's literally beat for beat King of Comedy, and
yes.
It pisses me off because
but just for some reason, it's a DC comic villain.
Like, King of Comedy is actually a good movie. When you watch King of Comedy, you're like, holy shit, this movie fucking rocks. And then you watch Joker and you're like, oh my God, it's like somebody watched this movie and didn't get it at all.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about me is I watched Joker and I was like, well, Joaquin Phoenix does a good job, but I don't like this movie at all, and I think it's probably bad for young men. And then I watched Joker Folie à Deux and had such a lovely time, because I was like, this is camp and it's awful, and Todd Phillips is taking this so seriously, but I am enjoying the hell out of why the fuck is Joaquin Phoenix tap dancing right now. It felt like watching like a junior high production of a musical where everyone is not doing a good job, but they're trying so hard. So I had the best time watching Joker Folie à Deux in theaters.
I don't know why we ever thought, the guy who did The Hangover, he's got chops. Let's let him cook a little bit more. It's like, dude.
Because when you're a man in Hollywood, you get to do things like that.
He wants to be taken seriously so bad. Todd Phillips, yes. I will never take you seriously. Todd Phillips, I don't know if you've ever done anything wrong, but I just hate you. I just hate you. I think that you are pretentious and annoying. You did The Hangover. That was your one movie. That's your one fucking movie that makes you culturally relevant. And forever, if I ever meet you, Todd Phillips, I am just gonna go, oh, you're the guy who did The Hangover. And I know that fucks with your head.
On the American Psycho.
On site.
On the American Psycho movie, Bret Easton Ellis recently said that he really likes the movie and that it's a good adaptation, but he was really critical of it for a long time. I think it's mostly because he just doesn't think it works as a movie, generally because it's hard to adapt something about consciousness for the screen. I actually think a movie that does it kind of well is is Requiem for a Dream. And I don't like Darren Aronofsky, but I think he captures that like surrealist stream of consciousness thing really well in that movie. He does not capture it well in Mother, but he does in Requiem for a Dream.
I also hate Darren Aronofsky. I get Darren Aronofsky if I ever fucking meet you. That said, Requiem for a Dream is a fucking fantastic movie.
It's a fantastic movie.
Yeah. It makes you feel just bleak afterward, and
just empty.
Yeah, like I am a huge fan of just bleak, hopeless cinema, and I avoided Requiem for a long time because of what other people had said. But I was like, no, I'll body this, and I
felt awful at the end.
I legitimately had to watch some videos of little baby piglets because it was a lot for me. That was pretty.
It's a tough one.
Pretty tough moment.
It's a tough one. Bret Easton Ellis also thinks it's hard to do the ambiguity of is Bateman actually killing people or not in a visual medium. I will be playing the role of Bret Easton Ellis in this podcast. He said in an interview, "You have to make a decision about whether Patrick kills people or doesn't in a movie. Regardless of how Mary Harron wants to shoot that ending, we've already seen him kill people. It doesn't matter if he has some crisis of memory at the end. The book itself doesn't really answer a lot of the questions it poses, but by the very nature of the medium of a movie, you kind of have to answer those questions. A movie automatically says it's real. Then at the end, it tries to have it both ways by suggesting it wasn't, which you could argue is interesting, but I think it basically confused a lot of people, and I think Mary would admit that."
Oh, I disagree completely. I think that the movie works so well with the ambiguity. And if anything, I actually think the movie has more ambiguity than the book does.
Butters just came in, so I think she agrees.
Oh, Butters! Yeah! Butters!
Butters has media literacy.
Butters, you always come in at the best times. You're so cute. You gotta go now. Go on. Get out of here. Get out of here, Butters.
Regardless of how you feel about the book and or the movie, about which one works better, who cares? The point about Patrick Bateman is that he ultimately serves as a mirror of male anxieties about status, fitness, beauty, and masculinity. I think there's also a connection here between men and boys not being taught ways to cope with anxieties, and thus Bateman acts out sexually and violently in order to get attention and deal with these complicated feelings about, like, personhood that he's having.
Yeah, this reminds me of something that I don't know. I've been wanting to talk to you about this lately. Like, I talk a lot about men's mental health. I think a lot about men's mental health. And lately, I have been reading discourse online about men's mental health type of things. And I just noticed this reaction from men where they're like, oh, when women have problems, it's a part of the system. But when men have problems, we're supposed to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. Where's the fairness in that? And I just feel like that it feels like it's running parallel to a lot of this, like, you know, and again, I'm not trying to say that men's problems are caused by, like, individual men who just want to be unhappy, but
no, it's caused by you know, they're blaming women for that issue when the problem is these patriarchal, God, I just became a woke little Gen Z on the internet as soon as I said the word patriarchy, but whatever. You know, these, like, patriarchal structures that teach men that there is no outlet for their emotions. And what that then does is breed resentment towards women who have structures that are created for them to work those things out. But it's like men could have those things too if they could just break themselves out of this paradigm, but they refuse to, And I mean they is like a cultural they, not any one individual person, but it becomes this thing of like, if we just blame women for these issues. But my big issue with the way that men's mental health is talked about right now is that the problem is women and that the solution is women fix it. And there is still no ownership for the way in which this whole problem, all of these issues, the quote unquote male loneliness epidemic, all of these statistics about like suicide advents, this whole notion that men are falling behind in school, is ultimately created by these systems for men that start as children, where they are not taught coping skills, where they are not taught healthy emotional outlets, and then as they get older, that is punished and punished and punished into them, that like, you are not supposed to cope with your anxieties in any sort of meaningful way. And then at a certain point, they're like, and this is all women's fault. And it's like, no, it is the way that society treats young men and boys, and the society is still masculine dominated. The problem here is not women. It is a prison of men's own minds. I think we see this in American Psycho, where it's like, the problem with Patrick Bateman is that he is trying so fucking hard to fit into this horrifically fucked up society, and it's killing him, but he cannot just go, I don't need to be a part of this anymore.
And just one sort of addendum to this too, like, being in the body image realm, like, it is bad when there are like women who shame men for like the size of their penises or their height or blah 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 blah. And though, like, that's bad, and that should be something that we call out and we talk about and create discourse around, but like, I never see that advocacy. Instead, it's just this like manosphere of like, of course women will only value high value men, therefore you must become a high value man.
Yeah, exactly. It's there's no discourse actually changing these systems. There's no discourse actually solving these problems. There's just discourse around like breeding more resentment for each other.
Yeah.
So today we're going to connect this fictional serial killer, his actions, and particularly his obsession with aesthetics, to real-world cultural movements, both the one he came out of in the 1980s and also where we find ourselves today in 2025. So Aubrey, your comment moves us perfectly into my next section, which is all about Bateman and his body, and how that his obsession with his body is a form of control. Patrick Bateman's body is a project. It's a way to assert control and mask emptiness. We read his morning routine earlier, and it's a ritual, it's religious in tone, and hollow in substance. He has no connection to any of the things that he's saying about his morning routine. This connects to me to this thing, The Beauty Myth, which was a book by Naomi Wolf in the 1990s. Do you know what The Beauty Myth is?
Yeah, I've got it on my shelf.
Yeah, you do. So do you want to tell people what The Beauty Myth is?
It is a book that I have on my shelf, but
Okay, I can tell you do you want me to tell you what The Beauty Myth is?
Yes.
So it's a critical text for understanding how beauty standards, particularly in the context of neoliberal capitalism, are used to control people, especially women. But it also provides a powerful framework for discussing Patrick Bateman's relationship to appearances and the commodification of bodies in both American Psycho and today's alpha male movement. So what Wolf argues in the book is that as women gained more social power, so as we get into all of these waves of feminism, beauty standards became more rigid and punishing. The myth is that beauty is objective and aspirational when it's really a political tool of control. So in American Psycho, this myth is mirrored and weaponized through a male protagonist instead of through a woman protagonist. Up top, when we're talking about men on this episode, we are really talking about this specific form of like cis male masculinity. I will say that like this leaks into the way that some trans men feel about their body, because they feel these pressures to adhere to this like cis male standards from friends who are more deeply in the trans community than me. You do sometimes have issues where like when trans men transition, they like take on a lot of this misogyny and toxic masculinity in order to like feel like men. But for the most part, when we're talking about this men in this episode, we are talking about cis men. And similarly, we are mostly talking about cis women, since that is mostly who we're interfacing with, who these cis men are interfacing with.
Yeah. I was actually just part of a panel at a conference where we talked about trans body image and stuff. And one of the papers that was presented was this really interesting finding about, it was like basically objectifying language from peers and the impact that it has on trans youth's body image. And what the interesting finding was that for some trans youth, gender-based objectification made them feel more secure in their gender identity. And the conversation that we had around this was like, well, yeah, like if the only time your gender is being affirmed is by objectification, that could make it feel affirming to be objectified. And that is an act of violence. And it's like, we had this conversation about how do we create a sense of gender that is disentangled from the violence around gender.
I think that's why you end up with this like small but real problem amongst trans women of like sort of trad-wifing themselves and becoming very conservative, because the only times in which they were made to feel like women and feminine early on was in a degrading way. And so they enter themselves into these like very sort of conservative and misogynistic spaces in order to like have their gender affirmed in a way that has felt routine for them their entire lives.
Yeah. The big quote from the beauty myth that I think people always quote or I see posted on social media is the one about dieting. It's like dieting is the most potent political sedative in history or something like that.
Yeah.
Which I think is an interesting thesis sort of statement. I think I've heard a lot of people, I'm really involved in like the kind of anti-dieting spaces, and I don't know, like when I think about the Patrick Bateman routine, it really just does remind me of a lot of what folks who I know who work with eating disorder clients experience, like this sense of like, it is something that almost becomes religious and ceremonial around the body and placing this emphasis on like, you know, my body is this thing that I have control over, and that level of control while you're in it and while I was in it, it felt like this act of love, but it is so destructive.
Right. So sort of like how the beauty myth connects into the book is that like Bateman's obsession with his own body and others' appearances suggests that the beauty myth has been internalized by men as well as women, especially in the hyper-competitive, consumerist, capitalist world of 1980s Wall Street. He's obviously obsessed with his own body. I mean, in that opening thing, he talks about doing 1,000 crunches. He goes to the gym every day. He's very obsessed with his own body. But he also comments on women's bodies as well. If I had to read the word hard body one more fucking time while reading this book, I was going to go stab a finance bro in Murray Hill. I was going to become radicalized.
Well, it's like, I think this is what we're seeing right now, right? Like, this is why all the Instagram girls all have the same face, because they all go to the same fucking plastic surgeons, and why the insecurities I'm seeing are getting so stupidly hyper specific of like, oh, you've got negative canthal tilt. Oh, it's over for you, bro. Like, it's like, holy fuck. What the fuck does any of this mean?
I'm pretty sure I have negative canthal tilt according to a TikTok filter, but I don't really remember what that means because I don't give a shit.
I know that I do because I made one.
It's because our eyes go down, right?
Yeah.
That's what that means?
Yeah. I made a post about looks maxing and specifically about mewing and how mewing doesn't change your jawline, and that really made a lot of young men angry with me. And so a lot of the ways that incels communicate online with people who they don't like is listing off all of the features about them that are unattractive. So with me it was like obese, negative canthal tilt, something and it's like also, sure, I don't fucking care. I've got a husband. You get no bitches.
I had to monitor Aubrey's Instagram comments for a while during that era because it was overwhelming.
I mean, I'm not exaggerating. I would go onto my Instagram and just have 1,000 comments telling me to kill myself. And that, I have a pretty good self-esteem, and that was a little much for me.
Yeah, which makes sense.
All right, everyone. So make sure you go to Informed Attraction on Instagram, and on whatever the latest reel I posted is, make sure that you write, it's over for you.
Or what? There was some gift that they kept sending over and over again.
It was a whale. I'm sure.
It was a whale. Yeah. in the book, there's a scene where he hires a prostitute and like 6 times on the phone, he very specifically asks for a blonde and then is outraged when she shows up and she's like dirty blonde. He like is very unhappy with the fact that she's dirty blonde. There's also a scene where he's at the video store, a place that he loves. He constantly needs to return some videotapes, and he describes the clerk as needing to lose 5 pounds, but then also like sort of desperately seeks to understand her and get her to understand him. Like he ends up like really craving the approval of this woman who he starts the interaction by like calling chubby.
This is literally me and every man on a dating app.
Yes. And I think like, yes. And I think, like, relatedly, the, like, one woman we see him spare in the movie and in the book is Jean, who's played by Chloe Sevigny in the movie.
Oh, so sexy.
Who is, like, she's so sexy, but she's also, like, the most normal person we see. And both in the character, she's also, like, the only woman in the movie who doesn't look like everybody else. He has a softness for her that he doesn't have for other women in his life who he talks about as if they're more attractive, sexually viable, whatever. But Jean is the one who he can't bring himself to kill and seems to even have a certain amount of affection for. And I'd contest it's because he sees her the most like an actual person, since she isn't a stranger or one of the other yuppies who he views as vacant as he is. And I think that's kind of what happens with this girl at the video store, where he's like, you're not trying so hard to look like all of us. It's interesting. It's interesting when he interacts with people who are not one of his friends, but also not someone who he views as like an unhoused person.
Well, it's interesting. It genuinely does remind me of when I was single and on dating apps, because I would always be really surprised at the kinds of men who were interested in me, because I would have never thought that a very physically fit, like muscular gym guy would be into somebody who looked like me. And fairly consistently that was the case, and it do be reminding me of American Psycho a little bit. Yeah. I think it's that little bit of that allure of something different, right? Like when you're surrounded by, you know, people who look a certain way, something that just looks a little different can become appealing. And what do you know? Aubrey Hoffer is a little different.
Aubrey, you're married, but I'd be so curious about your experience of going on the dating app Field.
What is that?
Did I tell you about my Field experience?
No, that's not the polyamorous one, is it?
So that's like part of it. So like Field is a dating app that's more geared towards kink. I sometimes describe it as like a Grindr for everybody. And I downloaded it when I was a little drunk on the bus coming home, and I was having a great time. I was like, hee, and like talking to these like very attractive men, and I was like, why am I immediately finding much hotter men on Field than I have ever found on being on like Hinge or Bumble in the city? And still, even though what I will say, what still really fucking pissed me off is this is the problem I have on every single dating app, is I will have my dating app set to all genders and they will still only show me men, and anyway. All to say, I went to bed that night, I woke up in the morning, and I had 2,000 people had liked me on Field.
Love that.
And as I went through the likes, I realized a large part of it is because there was a goth girlfriend thing going on. There was a fetishization going on, which it ultimately made me really uncomfortable, and I deleted the app. It scared me. It made me scared. But I'm curious if you would have a similar experience going on Field, if there would be a lot of like fetishizing going on.
I'm sure. I mean, there would be, and not just like fat fetishizing too. Like I'm not as well. I'm somewhat visibly alt. I mean, I have tattoos. I wear a lot of black, but like I do have a little bit of that, like, I don't know, oh, you want to impress me? I'm hard to please type of persona. I mean, it was like when I was single, I mean, that's what these gym dudes were like super into, is like, you know, I'd banter with them. I'd be, you know, cracking jokes. I'm one of the boys, and, you know, the typical lines don't work on me. I'm not like other girls. And that's, you know, that's usually who I am the cup of tea for.
And that kind of leads into that, like, Bateman's fixation with perfection, skin, hair, abs, clothes, reflects a masculinized version of the beauty myth. The aesthetic body becomes a performance of power and I'm really talking in the Midwest accent today. It's because, okay, fun fact for everyone, when I'm having a stutter day, when my stutter is bad, I lean onto a lot of really Midwest vowels. So I'm having a bad stutter day. So we're gonna get real Midwest today, even though I am not from the Midwest. I don't know. A speech pathologist can let me know why that's happening. The aesthetic body becomes a performance of power and control, not just attraction. He dates and has sex with a lot of women in this book. But honestly, the only time in the book where he wants a woman to be attracted to him is this woman who gives him a facial. He seems more interested in her telling him he's hot than from anyone else. And it's this thing of she is quote unquote less desirable to him. And so then, but that's who he wants so badly to tell him he's good looking. I think there's a disconnect between how he feels and how he appears. And that sort of gets into this idea of narcissism and self-hatred as two sides of the same coin. I do think that Patrick Bateman obviously has an inflated sense of self, as evidenced by this desperate desire to be not like the other girls since he's a serial killer. But his narcissism, even him looking in the mirror while he's having sex, that isn't genuine self-love. It's a desperate overcompensation for deep self-loathing. His obsession with perfection and admiration masks a core belief that he is empty, unworthy, and unrecognizable even to himself. And I think this gets into this repeated notion of the central question of real versus performed identity. This question of, is Patrick Bateman even there? There's this part from a Salon interview with Mary Harron where they're talking about the choice to have this thing in his apartment that is basically a light box with a suit in it, but no man. And this is the conversation that ensues. I'll be playing the role of the interviewer. I'll be playing the role of Mary Harron again. You've been cast. It's on the nose because, of course, there's a recurring theme in the movie that Patrick Bateman isn't really there. The other characters keep calling him by the wrong name. He talks about his non-existence in voiceovers at both the beginning and the end of the movie. What does the character of Bateman get out of saying that about himself? Because he doesn't seem to be a person or an entity who does anything without ego.
If you have him doing it at the beginning, then you know that this is his story and his version of events. What does he get from it? I don't know, because in some ways it's the voiceover absolutely from the book. I think a writer like Bret, in this case he had written this voiceover, gives a protagonist more self-knowledge than they have, maybe more insight or more eloquence, but it's also stating directly something that he undoubtedly must feel about himself, that he's always in panic because he doesn't know who he is or what he is. There's no core to him. So it's articulating that.
Yeah, it seems to be an idea that the movie swirls around, which is that the main character is not really a person, but an empty body that we project the ideas of the film through.
Although there's also all the rage and anger and panic. So he's not just empty. There's a sort of rolling rage and explosion inside him that erupts in the violence. So there's also the panic of feeling like nothing.
And that's I think to me what I really take away from the violence, whether real or just his fantasies, is it's he is so afraid of this fact that he feels completely alienated from himself, that the way that he copes with that is by imagining that he's not like all these other guys who are the same empty, vacuous nothingness. He is different from them because he is a serial killer. He is special. He is unlike the rest of these guys because he is this dark secret that nobody knows about. And then I think the thing that frustrates him by the end of the book is that no one can see that. That despite him knowing this about himself and him having this thing that sets him apart from everybody else still sees him as not being that.
This reminds me of a time I was in therapy, and I remember I said to my therapist something that was really similar to this, where I was like, sometimes I don't even know who I am. And she sort of scoffed, and she was like, no. You're one of the most, self-assured people I've ever met. You know exactly who you are, and when things are upsetting to you, it's because it's going against what you know is true about yourself. And that's what I also get from this conversation a little bit, is there's something just kind of juvenile too with Patrick Bateman being I don't even know who I am. It's when you have thoughts like that, that's your brain telling you that you're not living a values aligned life, as it were.
Right. Well, it's one of those things that, he's 27. I'm 27, and I feel like I have a pretty clear sense of self at this point in my life. But I was also socialized as a woman, which has a different level of introspection that you have as a young person then. And like, you know, I'll say I've been on dates with cis men in the city who are in their early 30s who I think really feel like this.
Yeah.
Because they've never had to really develop a sense of self. And so then they don't know how to communicate their sense of self to other people if they do have it. And it's really tricky. And it also reminds me of this thing that we were talking about in the Android Men and Autism episode, where I was talking about that, like, I have such a strong sense of self, but I have a hard time communicating how I feel inside to other people. And it feels like there's like this block up between the way that I view myself and the way that I'm being perceived by others. And I think that like that's sort of his central tension here a lot of the time, is that it's like he can't express all of these feelings that he's having inside to any other people, and they're still just seeing him in the same way they always have. And his feelings that he's having inside happen to be wanting to put a rat up a woman's body, but he still can't, like, get the people in his life to see that.
Patrick Bateman autism coded? My Blorbo?
No, you can't call Patrick Bateman your Blorbo. No. I'll ruin that for you here in a second. I will ruin that for you here in a second.
I will say, like, this idea of, like, struggling with identity, this is something that I think is more common with men. Like, this is something that my husband has really struggled with. Like, my husband was somebody who, since the age of 13, was this touring musician. And, you know, in his mid-20s, he reached this point where he was like, this is exhausting. I don't want to live this life anymore.
Yeah.
And, you know, he went to school, got a degree, tried to do the corporate thing. The corporate thing didn't really work out for him. He hated it. And now he's kind of just like chilling and vibing, and he's content with that now. But, you know, there are times where I think he has this like, oh, like, what am I doing with my life? What do I become? What do I be? And it's like, you can just be who you are and, you know, take some time and see what you want to do and grow into. And I think what's hard is that, like, living in a capitalist society, most people don't have the opportunity to just, like, figure out for a while, like, oh, what do I want to do? Like, what am I passionate about? How do I get there? So you have people who just sort of are doing this daily corporate grind and are just so deeply unfulfilled, but have no real option out of it, right? Or not even the corporate grind. Like, you have people who are working in warehouses, like Amazon warehouse workers don't get to have the luxury of, like, thinking about, you know, what can I do that fills my soul?
Yeah. I saw some of this with my older brother when he was no longer playing baseball, and like that huge part of his identity sort of was gone. And it's been kind of nice to see since he's become a father that, like, I feel like he's regained that chunk of his identity that was lost, of just like having a core thing that he does. And like, it used to be that he played baseball and now it's he is a parent. And I think that so often in America in general, across genders, but I do think this is a little bit more prevalent for men, they get so tied up in their job, the thing that they do being who they are, and that they have a really hard time knowing who they are outside of that. I am someone who I turn everything that I enjoy into a job. Famously. That's like famously a thing that I do. If we ever start making money doing this, I'll have done it again. And
please pay us. Please, MeUndies, Scentbird, whatever. Please, I'm begging you. Please, God, I need this.
But it's like, I also have like ways that I identify that are outside of the things that I do. Like, I don't just do theater. I don't just work for a YouTube channel. I don't just do a podcast. It's like, there are other ways I would define myself outside of those things. And I think that there are a lot of specifically young men who really struggle with identifying outside of the things that they do.
Yeah.
And older men. I think that like there's a lot of guys who like literally won't fucking retire because they're like, literally all I do is my job.
My dad? I mean, I've had to have similar conversations about academia, because academia is something that will just take and take and take from you and be this all-encompassing thing. And the people who I aspire to be like in academia are the ones who have pretty firm boundaries and are like, this is not the center of my universe. I am more than this. And they develop other things that they're interested in, and they cultivate other relationships. But I have met people in academia where their entire being is wrapped up in identifying as an academic, and shocker, they're fucking miserable.
And that's capitalism, baby.
Yeah, baby. And it's like, you're having this mindset and you don't even make enough money. Like,
yeah.
Like, you have this mindset and you're not even rich. What are you doing?
Yeah. Speaking of rich people who make jobs their lives, I think this is a good moment to talk about the relationship between this book and its particular moment in history. And that means we're going to talk about the yuppies. Aubrey, do you know what yuppies are?
I got called a yuppie once. It's, like, what was it? Like a term in the 80s for, like, people who were young and, like, kind of like the grind setters, right?
Yes. So yuppie comes from, it's like a truncated derogatory nickname for young urban professionals. Why did you get called a yuppie?
I don't know. Well, I remember when I did the play Friend Art, the characters get referred to as yuppies in a scene. And I really don't remember the context, but I just remember somebody called me a yuppie, and I was like, huh? But they didn't mean it in any kind of derogatory way. It was just kind of a like, oh, like, that, I don't know. I genuinely don't remember. I just recall being called a yuppie at some point, and I was like, aww.
That's great. So the 1980s yuppie culture emerged from a perfect storm of Reagan-era economics, deregulation, and a booming Wall Street. Reaganomics promised prosperity through tax cuts and free market capitalism, but it also fueled corporate greed and widening inequality. I would argue much of the situation we find ourselves today has a lot to do with one Mr. Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, if I could go back in time and kill a baby, it would be you. I would literally pick up baby Ronald Reagan by the scruff of the neck and immediately shaken baby syndrome. Immediately. No hesitation. It literally goes Ronald Reagan and then Hitler. That's how much I hate you, Ronald Reagan. Fucking rest in pieces, you piece of shit. I hope that the fucking scent of sulfur in hell stings the hairs in your asshole every second, and you live in a fucking realm of torture for the atrocities that you've committed. I hate you, Ronald Reagan.
Aubrey, you are filled with so much rage today, which is really funny considering the book and movie that we're talking about.
Here's the thing. I was made a woman in this life because if I was a man, I would have a cult by now. I was made a woman because making me a man would result in too many deaths.
See, and I just think if I had been born a man, I'd be the worst bisexual he-they living in Bushwick in a band, working at a coffee shop. I just think I would be a bastard rat with a guitar, ruining women's lives.
You're literally giving man right now. You've got your little tank top on. You've got a low ponytail situation going on. Your little tattoos peeking up through the screen. I get it. You'd be a menace.
And that's gender for you.
Mackenna would be Maddie Healy, and I would be...
No! Don't say that I'd be Maddie Healy! I probably would be Maddie Healy, let's be honest.
Mackenna gets to be Maddie Healy, and I get to be Jim Jones. There are two kinds of men.
I guess, but that means you... Okay. Jim Jones was kind of woke when it came to race, and Maddie Healy is famously racist.
Just like you and I.
The Reagan era also deepened an obsession with wealth accumulation that existed in American culture before this, but this was to a whole new level. This is where we get the yuppies. They embrace a lifestyle of excess, designer suits, power lunches. Success was measured not by integrity or creativity, but by your business card, your apartment, and your ability to out-earn your peers. However, beneath the glamour was a culture of intense competition and rigid conformity. Everyone was trying to climb the same ladder, look the same, act the same, and win the same game. I think that's how we, like, with Patrick Bateman being so fucking mad that Paul Owen got this Fisher account. We never find out what the account is. We never figure out why it matters. But Patrick is, like, seething that this account was given to Paul Owen and not to him.
Have we even talked about the business cards?
Oh, we're about to get to the business cards. It's in this section. I also want to mention, and this is why I think Aubrey can't call Patrick Bateman her blorbo. This is the main reason. Patrick Bateman is obsessed with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He is so obsessed with him. I'm not fucking with you. That was also a completely jarring part of reading this book in 2025. He brings him up so many times. He's obsessed with going to places that Trump has been. He's like obsessed when people say they like saw, this is when Trump is still married to Ivana. He's like obsessed with when people see Ivana places. Like, he's obsessed with him.
This is where I'm like, oh, Bret Easton Ellis was sort of based in the sense that, like, he created a character who literally, like, idolizes someone who in the 80s sucked. But, like, the future projection of who is literally a, like, fascist. I mean, it really does just make it, in that sense, age so well.
Yeah, it's really foreboding. In 2016, Ellis has said that he doesn't think Bateman would like today's Donald Trump the way that he liked 80s Donald Trump.
Disagree.
He said, I think in a way, Patrick Bateman may be disappointed with how Trump is coming off and who he's connecting with. Basically, Ellis said that he would have a problem with the fact that, like, Trump's whole brand was, like, appealing to blue collar voters. So in some ways, Patrick Bateman woke king, I guess, but also I think that Patrick Bateman would really like who Donald Trump is in 2025. Maybe that's true that Patrick Bateman wouldn't have fucked with 2016 Donald Trump, but I think Patrick Bateman would fuck with 2025 Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me too of how, like, billionaires now, they try to do this, like, I'm just like you, I'm just a guy, and it's like the whole thing with, like, Patrick Bateman and, like, 80s Donald Trump was, like, literally this persona of being above. Like, I'm at this upper echelon. I have a gold-plated toilet. I am something you could never even aspire to. And it's fascinating to me that really most of, like, the prominent billionaires in media who I can think of, like, Jeff Bezos obviously has nice shit, but, like, his public persona, I think he tries to keep more low-key compared to, like, 80s Donald Trump.
I think that's true of, like, like our two big villains, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. Yeah. But, like, when I think about people like Peter Thiel, and like those, like the kind of people I'm going to talk about later, the like biohacking, like grind set guys. Those guys, I think, still are very much living in this place of, like, rich people are better than you, and we're figuring out how to live. We're doing all this longevity stuff so we can live forever. And some of them are using that as a grift to, like, I think about the guy who does the bulletproof diet. Mm-hmm. Like, he has some, like, and you can be just like me going on. But, like, people like Peter Thiel are like, you cannot be just like me. I am better than you.
Yeah, and I just think it's really interesting that I feel like in the 80s, that persona was the norm, whereas now that persona is a lot more niche.
Yes, I agree. So a big part of all of this is looking the part, power suits, business cards, status symbols, like restaurant reservations and designer brands. These men in the books, I mean, they do this in the movie, but the book, it's like pages upon pages upon pages upon pages. These men talk about clothes more than I ever have with any of my friends in my entire life. There are so many pages, entire chapters of the book where they talk about hypothetical questions they could send into GQ about men's fashions. So one of them will like state a question they could send into GQ and then the rest of them will answer it. They all wear non-prescription Oliver Peoples glasses. All of them. And they all know what Oliver Peoples glasses the other ones are wearing. They're all tortoiseshell.
The thing that I hate is that purely the aesthetic looks so good.
It does. It does. Because they cared so much about what they looked like. Like, they were extremely thoughtful about, they were clinically thoughtful about what they looked like.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I love any kind of sort of preppy fashion in part because it just looks so polished and so good and so tailored and nice. And it's like, oh, you're evil though.
The thing that I've avoided saying this entire podcast episode, but I will say now, is I do think if I met Patrick Bateman in real life, I would be immediately attracted to him, and then he would start speaking, and I would have to commit ritual suicide.
Yeah, there are two ways it would go between me and Patrick Bateman. Either A, he's like, get out of the way, fatty, and then stabs me in the stomach. Or he's immediately in love with me.
I think you might end up in a Gene-style relationship with Patrick Bateman.
Oh, I think I've had a Gene-style relationship with a Patrick Bateman.
You have. It's interesting. What I do know is in the book, I think this is the first dinner party they go to in the book at Evelyn's townhouse, and she has this friend who brings his not girlfriend, but kind of girlfriend, and she has a green streak in her hair, and Patrick Bateman is very upset about the green streak in her hair. So I think Patrick Bateman would have been okay with Mackenna when I first moved to New York and I had the blonde highlights. I think now the red is making him be like, that fucking freak.
Yeah. Too alternative.
I mentioned this earlier, but Patrick Bateman is obsessed with getting into this restaurant, Dorsia. Dorsia is this elusive and high-status restaurant. It's central to the film's commentary on prestige. He is constantly trying to get into it. He is lying to women saying he has reservations at Dorsia. There's a part where he takes someone to Dorsia, lies and said he's this person who he's not, and then they sit at the table and the other couple shows up. And this just underscores the lengths to which he will go to maintain his social image. And it then is really funny when his sort of like burnout brother, Sean, immediately is able to get in there.
One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when he tries to make the reservation at Dorsia and the maitre d' just starts laughing.
Yeah. It's very funny. In the book, it's like they don't even answer the phone when he calls because he calls so often.
Did they explain in the book how the brother is able to get the reservation?
No. All it is that like him and Patrick and him are like setting the time to like meet up because they hate each other, but they're like forcing each other to see each other. And Sean's like, meet me at Dorsia.
And just Patrick Bateman, just a blood vessel breaks.
Yeah, totally. So Aubrey alluded to this earlier. There is a famous scene from the movie, which is the business card scene, where they're all comparing business cards. And it's super demonstrative of how like extremely fragile the egos of these men are. And it emphasizes this notion of masculine insecurity disguised as dominance. Aubrey, I know we've both seen this movie many times, but I would like for us to watch the business card scene right now just because I think it will be delightful. So I will send you the link I have to it.
I'm not even exaggerating. I think this is one of the best acted scenes in movies.
It's so good.
I forget how many movies in the 90s and 2000s I'll be watching that I absolutely love, and then I just go, Jared Leto!
Yeah, the Jared Leto jump scare will get you.
He's everywhere! I forgot that one of the things that I do love about the book that they don't do in the movie is the descriptions of food that just become increasingly more bizarre and less edible. I think is such a fun call just frequently.
They are constantly going out to eat and they are never eating, and there's a scene pretty early on where they like go out to drink and the maitre d' keeps sending them bellinis, and every time a new round of bellinis comes, Patrick is getting more and more angry that the bellinis keep showing up, and then they order food and no one eats any of the food, and it's like, why the fuck did you guys go out to eat?
And the things that they eat are like, it's a goat's milk primavera, like it's just word salad.
It's like yucky gross shit, which is like, as someone who has done some tasting menus in New York, they have all been very good. I think food in New York is very good, but every once in a while something would get said to me and I would be like, yuck. Like, what? But they would taste good.
All right, I watched the scene. I went back because I wanted to look at all of the cards and see which one I liked the most. I'll describe the scene because
yes,
we do sometimes just start talking about the scenes and then forget that we are an audio format. So
yes.
So in this scene, Patrick Bateman is sitting in a boardroom with some of the other homies. Paul Allen comes in. He immediately misidentifies Patrick Bateman as this other guy, Marcus, who does the same job as Patrick Bateman, goes to the same barber, wears the same suit and glasses, because, of course, they're the same goddamn guy. They talk for a minute. Paul Allen, who is played by Jared Leto, terrifyingly, is really sort of condescending and snarky to Patrick Bateman. He gives his business card, to one of the other men, and then he leaves. And then Patrick Bateman pulls out his new business card and is like, isn't this the best goddamn business card you've ever seen? And then one of the homies is like, no, here's my fucking business card. And one of the other ones is like, here's my fucking business card. And Patrick Bateman is getting more and more upset at how good everyone else's business card is. And then he asks to pull out Paul Allen's business card. And everyone gets stunted on because Paul Allen has the greatest business card of all time.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like in the book too, like Paul Owen is like less condescending towards Bateman. He's actually like, besides the fact that he like totally thinks he's Marcus Halberstrom, he's actually pretty nice to Patrick Bateman.
Yeah.
But Patrick is just like, that motherfucker has everything I want and I'm gonna kill his ass.
Yeah, it's interesting. Paul Allen is definitely presented as, dare I say, the alpha of these of these men, because he's the one who has the Fisher account and he has a reservation at Dorsia and he has the best business card. So he's like the guy who all of these guys are aspiring to be like.
I think it's sort of the difference in the book to the movies. In the book, like, I think Paul is aware of that in the book, but he's like chiller about it. Whereas in the movie, Jared Leto's doing a lot of like hardcore flexing.
Yeah, which I think both interpretations are cool.
Yeah, I think they're both correct. There's also
it reminds me of a conversation I had with my mom once about my brother. And my brother, so when we grew up in a town south of Arizona, in a town south of Tucson.
When we grew up in Mexico.
I mean, I was very close to the Mexican border and grew up in this town that was quite small. All of my brother's friends were all of these, like, little Mexican kids. And so my brother had a boxed out fade haircut. He wore the rosary and the chains, and he dressed exactly like them. Then we moved to Chandler, Arizona, and he becomes friends with the wrestlers and the preppy guys, and he wears chubbies and boat shoes. Yeah. And then now we're in this weird country era, so he's got long hair and he wears flannels. And I remember I was talking to my mom once, and I was like, why does Dalton just dress like everyone around him? It's like he doesn't have any actual inclination of who he is. He just does what other people tell him. And I was getting really frustrated by it. And my mom was like, he's not like you, Aubrey. He's a follower. And it just is so different to me, because I'm just someone who, you know, I've had times where I follow trends, certainly, but I've just also always had this sense of like who I am, whereas my brother, much like these guys in American Psycho, it's like they just take on the personality of whatever guy they want to be like.
Yeah, exactly. Additionally, there's also a real obsession and knowledge of what all the women are wearing in the book and in the movie. Patrick constantly both describes what he is wearing, what his friends are wearing, and what the women in his life are wearing. And he has like a lot of opinions about the clothes and brands that women in his life are wearing. In this world, appearance is a social currency, which leads to individuality being flattened into labels. There's hardcore uniformity in Patrick's social world. The way that they style Paul Allen and Patrick Bateman in the movie, they look really, really similar. They have basically the same haircut. It's like actually weird to like see Jared Leto looks. It's funny because like in the context of the movie, it's definitely that like Patrick is trying to look like Paul, but in my brain, because I love Christian Bale and I am not a Jared Leto enjoyer, it feels like, why is Jared Leto trying to look like Christian Bale? Even though I know that's not what's happening.
There's also just a contrast too, I think, because Jared Leto is visibly smaller than Christian Bale, and we don't normally see that dynamic. We would think, oh, the smaller guy would want to look like the bigger guy, and that's a little bit inverted here. Yeah.
There's a lot of uniformity in Bateman's social world. Everyone is hot, rich, and generic. There's, as we mentioned, there's like a running bit in the book where people are constantly calling each other by the wrong name. It's actually like deeply hard to keep track of who is actually in a scene in the book because all of the men sort of blur into one amorphous blob, except for Paul, who we know because Patrick is obsessed with him, and Lewis Carruthers, who is gay and wants to kiss Patrick real bad.
Yeah. I always forget about his character. The actor who plays him is so good.
And the way that they style Lewis in the movie is different than the way that they style Lewis does look distinct from the rest of the men, and I think that's very intentional.
Yeah, of course.
I think part of the reason Patrick hates Paul so much is the fact that Paul thinks Patrick is Marcus Halberstram, but also Patrick plays along with it. When he's with Paul, Patrick will refer to his fiancée, Evelyn, as Marcus Halberstram's girlfriend, Cecilia, and Evelyn is expected to just go along with it. There's a scene where they're at I think it's Evelyn's Christmas party, which is at Evelyn's house, but Paul comes and is like, Cecilia, Marcus, and then Patrick is referring to his fiancée, Evelyn, as Cecilia to Evelyn's face, and to Evelyn's both credit and non-credit, she just kind of has no idea what's going on.
Yeah, because she's just oblivious.
Which I think is a great time to say, by the way, Patrick hates Evelyn.
Yeah.
He despises her. And in every scene where they're together in the book, I was like, I would actually implode if this was someone who I was engaged to be married to. And it's bad in the movie, but it's even worse in the book. In that Christmas party scene, Patrick makes her leave her own Christmas party that she is hosting at her townhouse to like go to the club. And in both, they do
go
break
back
up
to the
by
club.
Go back to the club.
Back to the club.
In both, they do break up by the end, and thank God. Aubrey, I do have the scene with Evelyn where he breaks up with her linked from the movie if we would like to watch that.
Sure. I'm thinking, go back to the club. Why did he say it like that? Why did he say it like that?
Do you think 1 year of medical school entitles you to plow through the riches of my Emersonian mind? Entitles me? Yes. Entitles me? Yes. Entitles me? Yes. So go back to the club.
Go back to the club.
I'm sorry that happened. That happened to you, Adam Driver.
He consented.
Okay, time traveling into the future where we talk about the breakup scene.
Great scene. So basically in the scene, Patrick and Evelyn are at a restaurant and Evelyn is distracted by other people walking in. Well, Patrick is like, I need to kill people. And she's just like, oh, look at her bracelet. And then Patrick is like, we're done. It's over. And Evelyn's like, but your friends are my friends. My friends are your friends. I don't see how it would work. And he's like, you can keep them. And then Evelyn says, and what I think is a really cool little bit of dialogue, is she's like, but what about the past? And Patrick's like, we never really shared one. And then he gets up to go. Evelyn is like freaking out and he just dips. So I think the scene is super cool. I love how like it is the opposite of what you would expect a conversation about a relationship ending to go, because it's just these broad, what about the past? And I think that just shows how hollow Evelyn's character is supposed to be. And I think it's interesting if you think of this as a movie where everything is in Patrick's mind, because it's like, this is how he sees her, which may not be how she actually is.
Right. The three things I like about the scene is that at the beginning he's doodling with a crayon on the tablecloth, the paper tablecloth, drawing last night's murder. Towards the beginning, he's like, I have homicidal tendencies, and she's just like, la 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 la. And then also I love the part where she calls him inhuman, and he goes, no, I'm in touch with humanity.
I love it. Fun fact, when I watched this movie for the first time when I was a child, I would try to copy Patrick Bateman's drawings that he does throughout the movie.
Oh no. I think a key quote from the book and the movie is Patrick says, I want to fit in. And he does, to the point that no one can tell these men apart. I genuinely think the central tension of Bateman's character is he both desperately wants to fit into the culture, but also envisions himself as different from all of these other men. His superficiality is not just psychopathic, but it's also cultural. He reflects what yuppie society incentivized. The body as a project of productivity and consumption, working out as a capitalist ritual, his violence as a grotesque response to the failure of visual perfection to satisfy him, and this background of hollow affluence and performance-driven identity is what makes American Psycho so haunting. Patrick Bateman is not an outlier. He's the logical endpoint of a system that rewards image over substance. Aubrey and I have been talking about this for an hour and 49 minutes. I don't know how long it'll be once I cut shit that we're not going to keep in, but it is long. So while I had originally envisioned this as a one-shot episode, I originally had a 5-page outline. We are currently at the bottom of page 7 of my 15-page outline. So there will be a part 2 to this episode. In part 2, we will talk more about the violence in this movie and how that fits into the rest of us. We'll do a quick interlude about the musical American Psycho, and then we'll get into a conversation about who the Patrick Batemans of today are. Aubrey, any final thoughts on the first half of our exploration into the depraved mind of Patrick Bateman?
I think maybe the scariest thing was Jared Leto.
Have a question or a topic that you would like for us to discuss? Send us an email at informedattraction@gmail.com.